Another reason why I left religion, the church, Christianity, and fundamentalism is that church teaches homophobia, queer erasure, and anti-queer lifestyle choices. Now, this is a brief trigger warning for people who have experienced trauma, neglect, disownment, or abandonment by family due to their sexual orientation or choice of partner. So I'm going to recount the experiences that I've had in 4 different denominations of Christianity, as well as 7 churches. I grew up never hearing about queer or gay issues. My extreme fundamentalist Baptist church environment completely erased non-heteronormative behavior, lifestyles, and families. The only thing that was ever discussed was biblical marriage between a man and woman of the same nationality, of opposite gender. I never saw a book, magazine, or event that included anything but strictly cis heteronormative white relationships. When I got to be almost 18, I learned that there were some exceptions that were never discussed. I've read over 70 books from various Christian denominational libraries. Not one time did I ever see anything about sexual orientation that wasn't heterosexual. I never experienced any books or any information that was Christian related that dealt with asexuals, bisexuals, non-binary, gender fluid, anything. Everything was heteronormative, and even that word wasn't used because that would imply, there was something that wasn't. And this was very disastrous, not just for myself, even though I'm a straight female of 31. I can't imagine the damage, trauma, and how badly people's mental health suffers due to having no representation or negative representation in media. There is no queer characters mentioned in the Bible of good repute. And anyone who did not adhere to the heteronormative standard of marriage, 2 kids, and a white picket fence couldn't get into the senior leadership roles. I've never sat under a pastor who wasn't married to a cis straight woman. I've never sat under a pastor who wasn't cis straight and didn't have children, either young enough to be at home or old enough to be on their own. I never sat under a pastor that was not married. I've never been in any class where a single man or woman ever taught me a single thing, unless it was my own brother. And this is a problem. There's nothing wrong with teaching people about the wonderful things of heteronormative culture, any more than there's something wrong teaching about African American culture. The problem is when there is no other representation. And if you're lucky to understand that there is something else, it's never held in high esteem. It's always degenerative. It's always Sodom and Gomorrah kind of behavior. Some Christian churches have unfortunately taught and enabled homophobia, queerphobia, and sexism. A lot of people use the biblical interpretation that many denominations have adhered to where biblical passages condemn people who don't follow the heteronormative cis lifestyle. Even though it's not really a choice, they believe they can beat it out of you, or worse, pray it out. A lot of Christians believe that the passages in the Bible that condemn people who aren't heteronormative as a valid and the only way to live life. They label people who are not heteronormative as sinful, abomination, or a sodomite. There are still laws on the books in half of the U.S. states that still call certain things certain slurs. It's important to note that many scholars and progressive Christian traditions offer alternative interpretations, but this is not mainstream. And it's not what the conservatives, specifically the ones that support Trump, believe. Church teachings and practices is a good way churches pursue homophobia. Churches sometimes explicitly preach sermons that teach that anything non-heteronormative is wrong or a mental or sinful disorder. Churches may implement policies that exclude non-straight people from leadership roles, ordination, or full participation in church life. Some churches may actively oppose any marriage that isn't heteronormative between opposite gender, usually within the same racial perimeters. They oppose rights of non-heteronormative people, contributing to social prejudice, discrimination, inequality under the law, and potential hate crimes and deaths. When the social norm, especially before the 2010s, greatly majoritarily supported heteronormative people's way of life and condemned and discriminated against people who did not fit heteronormative expectations, we created a society where people feel afraid when they don't fit those norms. Some churches foster a climate of fear or judgment, making it difficult for non-heterosexual people to be open about their identities for fear of losing their family, their social net, their support group, their mentorship, leadership, and acceptance in probably the only environment they've ever known. Certain instances of extreme homophobia, exhibited by several groups like the Westboro Baptist Church, have garnered widespread condemnation from other denominations, highlighting the need for vigilance and accountability against hate crimes. And don't get me wrong, it's not all Christians, but every church denomination that believes the Bible is completely true can't not say, even if they say they don't agree with something being a sin, if you hold to a book that condemns something, that makes you a hypocrite. And what about the psychological, emotional, and spiritual impact on people that aren't heteronormative? The negative messaging, the thought-stopping language, the experiences with homophobia in every denomination of church can have significant and damaging impact on the mental and emotional well-being of non-heterosexual individuals. Many non-heterosexual people of faith struggle with feelings of guilt, shame, internal conflict due to the perceived contradictions between religious beliefs and the reality of their sexual orientation or gender identity. And another thing that most people don't acknowledge, how many people have killed themselves or self-harmed because there is a biblical opposition against people having equal rights. Homophobia isn't just the fear of people who are queer, it's discrimination. Anytime you discriminate against somebody for any reason that is not protected under the law is wrong. you should always treat people with respect. Any person who lives the life they want, as long as it's legal and everyone consents, who cares? If someone decides they're not heterosexual based on evidence in their own life, why does it matter? People think that if you're not heteronormative, that you don't have the 2 kids and the white fence, you're trying to harm children. And that's not true. 53% of people who are arrested for crimes are heterosexual cis men. And I would say 9 out of 10 of them are white. And that's something you can easily Google. A lot of churches are moving away from the homophobia, but it's still underlined in every law that comes up in every state. Ultra-conservative states such as Texas, Florida, Wyoming, Louisiana, Mississippi have tried to pass laws or has indeed passed laws that discriminate against people. 2025 in Florida, they're trying to pass a law where you can sue somebody for calling you a homophobe when you're behaving like a homophobe. You can't say words like gay in school because people actually believe you can make somebody gay just by talking about it. Kind of like how you can make somebody a terrorist for talking about 9/11. It's asinine. The problem with teaching people only about heteronormative lifestyles is you're erasing about 25% of the people. There are a lot of people in the military that spent their entire lives hiding who they are because of the don't ask, don't tell. And just because a law is revoked doesn't mean traditions and the underlying feeling of threat is no longer there.